Hello everybody, this is Randy Ross with Front Porch Chat. I'm excited today to bring you a Superman of sorts, someone that I met during the 2016 Donald Trump campaign. His name is Christopher Comins. His name is actually Chris, that's what I call him. Chris, thanks for being here. Chris will work.
Thanks for having me, Randy. I appreciate being here.
Thanks for being here today, Chris. You know, folks, I'll be looking down at my computer here and there to get your questions or comments for Chris. But Chris, if you could just kind of be, you know, you have a very interesting story that goes back, I guess, to where, you know, being brought up in Michigan and your transition here. And I found it pretty fascinating to think about where you came from to here. Can you kind of share with everybody how you got started? Tell us a little bit about Chris the man.
Well, I was born in Detroit at Detroit General. Grew up in Detroit, learned how to weld when I was in high school, and became an iron worker and really kind of had a hard time keeping jobs. Laid off a lot, the economy was bad. Unemployment in Detroit at the time was 18%. So I decided to pack up my van and go to Orlando, where I'd never been before, but
oh, really?
We had just finished building the trusses for what was called Spaceship Earth. At the time I didn't realize it, but that's at Epcot. So I figured I'll go there and try and get a job, and tied the bed to the roof and left with $2 grand in my pocket. And that was 35 years ago.
Tell us about the company that you built. What exactly did, I mean, and you talk about piping and things like that, but you know, before we get into talking more about your support of our president, what was the company? What was it exactly?
Well, Cummins Welding was the initial name of the company. And for the first 3 years, I was my only employee. I started that when I was 22 years old. And basically I rented a shack in Taft for $100 a month and made valve wrenches and probe rods and whatnot that I could sell to distributors. And from there I just grew the company a little bit at a time, moved into a 20 by 60 foot bay and bought a threader and learned how to make flange pipe and just started adding products, and then started adding people and went to a bigger location.
How many people actually worked for you at the height of your company before you sold it?
When I sold the company, I had 340 employees, 6 manufacturing plants across the country. It was in Portland, Phoenix, San Antonio, Philadelphia, Atlanta, and headquarters in Orlando.
So it's a long way from that single bay that you started out with. You live a really big life. You know, the cars, the house. That's actually, by the way, we've decided to show Chris's front porch. I guess I should get out of the way so you can actually see his front porch. But that's actually Chris's, he calls it the castle, a long way from Detroit, Michigan. How do you, when you look back now, what do you think about life and how you've come to this space?
You know, I never thought about having a goal where I'm going to attain this or obtain that. I really just wanted to have a successful company and be a good employer to as many people as I could. And
but you've driven drags. You have a drag car. You have, you know, planes and this and that. How did you? Where did that?
One plane. Let's not get started with that.
But you know, a lot of folks don't realize this, that if you have a plane, sometimes you borrow other people's planes and they use your planes. It's like a big, interesting thing. But tell us about the drag car and how do you get into this thing for, I mean, that's a lot of danger, but you have a desire for speed, obviously, or you wouldn't do something like that.
I've pretty much been racing all my life.
Really?
And I set the dragster down about 2 years ago. I still own it, but
it's in his garage at his location.
Yeah. Well, that's actually at CD, Cummins Development, which is my current business. It's been a year Saturday since I retired from custom fab after 33 years in the piping industry. Basically, what we did at custom fab was we built piping systems for the waterworks industry. That is wastewater plants, water plants. Flush a toilet, turn on a faucet. Everything goes on in between those two things is a lot.
Right.
It's a very large industry that I was fortunate enough to fall into. I was actually putting up a building, a 3-story, in Regency Park when somebody walked next door and asked me if I would be interested in starting a welding shop for them. And I had never seen a piece of ductile iron pipe. So I went to work at what was called Waterworks Manufacturing, and they had about 15 employees. I was there about 10 months when I started doing what they do at night. And then they found out what I was doing, and I got fired.
Oh no, you got fired?
I've been fired more than once. And within 6 months, I had stolen all their employees and most of their customers.
Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in politics, Chris. You know, you've obviously been...
You?
No, that's not true. The way I met Chris is very funny because I'd been going to a friend of mine's across the street, and this house that you see behind you, or behind us, was being renovated. And I was like, that house is so cool. Well, apparently one day you put up a Trump sign. Now I see it in your window there, but I think you put it in your yard. And so Melissa either stopped you on the street or whatever, and she said, are you a Trump supporter? And what a lot of people don't realize is that you immediately went into like a high mode on this. You actually, he held a party for all of our volunteers in July of last year. We're talking over the top, catered, valet parking, no expense spared. It was amazing. And during 2016, we'd actually end up holding 3 of those style events for us, so we were very grateful for that. But that was actually how I got to know you, and I don't think people realize that side of you, and why I wanted to talk to you today. You're an extremely generous man. You give back to your community. Tell us about the police station that you just renovated in Belle Isle, and how you actually even found out there was a problem there.
During the course of we had 3 fundraisers.
Right.
We had 2 and then a victory celebration.
Correct, right.
Well, during the course of that, we had a lot of high exposure clientele, shall we say. And consequently, I hired the Belle Isle Police Department to set up checkpoints on the street, put a boat in the water, and protect the property and clientele during the course of these events. While that was underway, I met the police chief, Laura Houston, and she suggested, with the amount of development I was doing in Belle Isle, that maybe I should put a swing set on a playground or something, you know, for the community. And I said, well, tell me, why are you not in your police station? I noticed you're all working out of City Hall. She said, well, we've been overrun by mold and can't afford to fix it.
Now this is a city right outside of Orlando. Approximately 7,500 people live there. A part of the Conway chain of lakes is there. It's a very, very, very nice area. But you actually walked in the police station one day, and that's how you realized really how bad the problem was.
Well, yeah, I walked right back out. That mold was dangerous. It was so strong in there that it'd make you sick. So rather than put up on a swing set, I suggested to Laura that, why don't we rebuild the police station for you? I'm not a licensed GC, but...
That's a general contractor.
Yeah, we've done a few projects in our days. Anyway, so we decided to take that on. I hired Rabitz and Romano, the architects. We tore the roof off the building, tore all the inner walls off. It took us 90 days to complete the project. I didn't keep track of the expenses. Doesn't really matter.
Well, it was a substantial, I mean, we're talking from the ground up. Everything was totally renovated, revamped. There was a dedication ceremony. I believe your name is on a plaque on the outside of the building. You're totally underestimating how amazing this was for this community. But, you know, not too many people who get to the place in life that you are, just like our president, are not necessarily going out and just going on vacations all the time. You decided to take your own resources and funds to make this happen, because I think you care that much about, you know, the men and women in uniform specifically.
That's exactly true. You know, they don't deserve to not have a place to work. These are men and women that are putting on a badge and a gun every day and going out onto the street where they could easily face peril. And they're not doing it for the money, because they don't get paid enough money.
Right.
I'm not sure how much enough money is, but
that's true.
And I didn't ask for the plaque on the wall. It wasn't my idea. I didn't write it. So.
Well, that's not the only thing that you're working on. Tell us a little bit about this project that you're getting ready to do with an Orange County park.
Well, my daughter Jenny gave me my first grandson 9 months ago, KJ Jr. And it just so happens that KJ has Down syndrome. And the fact is, there's no special needs interactive park in Belle Isle. Consequently, we're going to stake out an area and create a park.
Now, what is the special needs? I mean, I obviously understand what special needs are, but what is a special needs park? Because I don't think I've ever even heard of anyone creating something like that before. So what will be the unique parts about that?
Well, it's going to be a place where kids with autism and wheelchairs, Down syndrome, you name it, can interact with children who don't have special needs. And the equipment is set up specifically. There's several companies in the United States that build park equipment. And come tomorrow, we're going to have a perimeter set up, so we'll be able to survey a floor plan, send it up to the company that builds the equipment, and they will turn it down. And they provide us a layout.
That's awesome, Chris. I mean, you mentioned your daughter. Do you have other children as well?
I do. I have two sons, 34 and 32.
And they work in the business that you use?
Yes, they still. My youngest one is the branch manager of the Orlando operation, and really is over, I think, when I left, there was 11 stores. I think he runs 5 or 6 of them now. And my other son works in estimating, Chris Jr., and both of them are married. Both of them live nearby. All of my children are within a mile or mile and a half of my home, and that's specifically why I moved there, is so I could have close proximity to my kids, and then build a boathouse and hang up a ski and a couple of jet skis, and lo and behold,
there you have the cost.
There they are. You know, they come visit me a lot more.
You've obviously been a huge supporter, both financially and supportive-wise, of our president. But what about the other president inaugurations that you've been to? You shared with me a very interesting story once about when you guys were hungry at one of them. Do you mind sharing that story with everybody? I thought that was pretty funny.
Oh, I don't know about that. Bottom line is, when George W. Bush was inaugurated, it was pouring rain outside. Didn't think it was really going to go down. But sure enough, we trudged through the mud, and made it to the inauguration, made it through the inauguration. We got back to the hotel. Can't believe you remember this.
I remember that.
We got back to the hotel.
How you got the food was interesting.
It was like 3 or 4 hours. I stole it, okay? It was like 3 or 4 hours wait for the room service. You couldn't get any restaurants, starving, no food. So I snuck through a event into a kitchen where a bunch of Democrats were having a party. So I felt better about that. Okay, and I grabbed up a 5-gallon pail and filled it up with a bunch of food. Crawled back through my event, back to my room.
Hey, I think people will think that's a funny story as well.
Hey,
Chris,
hilarious.
When you think about your life, what makes you most happy? The things that we see you doing, obviously, you're obviously out there having fun, traveling here and there. But what do you think makes you most happy?
My children, no question about it. You know, my son Chris, his wife Kelly, my son Kyle, his wife Lisa, my daughter Jenny is engaged to Kenny, and my grandson KJ. And let's not forget to mention my gorgeous girlfriend Ashley, who was sitting right here.
She's in the studio with us today, folks. She just
say hi, Ashley.
She's not going to say anything. I don't think. She's shy.
I'll pay for that.
What's on your bucket list, Chris? If I had to ask you, you've done so many different things. What is something that you haven't done yet that you'd like to do?
Well, travel the world's always kind of up there on my list. I never planned on getting into this development business, but it's kind of fun. And I never really planned on a lot of things, but here we are.
If we could all be so lucky. But you're developing a whole set of properties down in Belize, correct?
Now, Belize is a couple four. Yeah.
And then a lot of people don't realize that you have a lot of property you're developing around the lakes in Belle Isle as well.
I wouldn't say it's a lot of property.
It would be to you and I, it'd be a lot of proproperties. To him, it's not a lot of properties, but it is a lot.
Well, one development is going to be 28 townhomes, nine on the water, and the balance off the water, but each will have a slip to put a boat into, and there'll be a centralized playground and a couple of fishing observation decks. We're still working the details of that out with City Hall.
Yeah, that's been an interesting process.
And
we won't get into that.
We just, small town politics, always fun.
It's always. Actually, I'll be covering your interview for Florida National News. We'll be interviewing you tomorrow, along with Commissioner Pete Clark, Commissioner Bobby Lance at Warren Park, which is, I believe, the park you're going to be putting the special needs park in.
Yeah, that's correct, along with my daughter, Jenny, who's really the primary here, you know. She's the one. She opened up the Upside of Down Foundation.
Oh, very Very cool. Tell us about that.
Well, you know, Jenny graduated as a nurse 2 days on our end, 2 days prior to giving birth to KJ.
Right.
And since then, she's been involved in a lot of support groups, physical therapy. She's a brilliant girl, brilliant medical mind. And it turns out the 20 people in her group, it looks like she's the only one that has any knowledge as far as how to raise special needs children. So consequently, the first thing we're going to do is the park. And once we get the park complete, we're going to turn, and I believe Jenny wants to open up a clinic, whereupon it's going to be a nonprofit. She teaches parents of special needs children how to raise them. All right, and she's into the not so much the medical, chemical, you know, genetical way of treating, but more holistic, to do with food and exercise and things of that nature.
I've seen you around your daughter with her child. She obviously has taken that challenge, and she seems to be a wonderful mother.
And she's the best mother that boy could have ever found. That's a fact. Well, God gave that job to the right child.
Awesome. Let's wrap up quickly with a conversation regarding President Trump. What are your thoughts? He's now, 7 or 8 months into the presidency. What are your thoughts about how the media treats him? More importantly, how do you think he's doing so far?
Well, I think he's doing great. And, you know, he set out his agenda in his campaign, and he's addressing his agenda, and he's making the things happen that he said he would make happen. But when you've got a bunch of obstructionists, left-wingers that want to do nothing but dream about getting him out of office, and they'll do anything they can to get in the way of him accomplishing his goals, to attempt to discredit him.
Right.
I've never seen such a witch hunt in my life. He's a good man. He's not doing this for the money.
Sure.
And he sure isn't doing it so he can be harassed day in and day out, or have his wife or his children attacked by the media as well.
Yeah, that's frustrating to watch.
I believe that bothers him more than, he doesn't care about the media going after him. All right, it's been that way for how many years? Probably all of his life.
Right.
But he's a good man. He's very smart.
And you've met him a number of times.
Yes,
during this.
I have.
Right.
And we've had some conversations. You know, during the day after the first debate, I mentioned to him it might be a good idea for us to rethink this whole Mexican thing, because quite frankly, you're alienating a large portion of the voting public. And also, we don't have a workforce to replace them. They're like the hardest working workforce we've got in America.
Right.
So, you know, he listens. He actually acted like he said it was an honor to meet you, Mr. Comins, and I'm like, yeah, right. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, because you always got better, like, I'd be way in the back, and there'd be Chris right up in the front, getting all the pictures. I still don't know how Ashley got those selfies. I'm still shocked by that one.
Ashley snuck her camera into that event, and she wasn't supposed to, and right after that happened, the Secret Service barked, and it said the next person pulls the camera out, it's going to get taken away.
So we've got a number of people that have joined.
And then Mike Pence showed up.
Oh, that's
and next thing you know, we got a picture of the three of us.
I don't even know how you did that either.
Well,
they were
she takes really good selfies. I don't take selfies.
Well, I guess they wouldn't
at all.
take a camera away from her, like they would take one or a phone away from her, like they would us.
Somehow that seems to be how things work out. Imagine that.
Well, Chris,
we actually were at the inauguration, and the first night was the vice president's ball, and I didn't get our credentials fast enough, so we weren't even on the list.
Now, this is a fascinating
story. And we had no badges, we had no credentials whatsoever. And Ashley managed to talk her way past 2 sets of Secret Service groups, and there we were.
I can tell you firsthand that is not easy to do. That is certainly not easy to do. Well, Chris, as we start to wrap this up, you know, I want to give one more funny story. I think is your trip to the Kentucky Derby, which was very cool, and how you picked the horse and all this other kind of. Or Ashley, I don't know who picked the horse that won, but tell us a little bit about your trip to the Kentucky Derby. Was that your first time going?
Actually, I took my oldest son last year, and we had such a good time. I bought a whole table and planned on taking my whole family this year. So, although Kyle couldn't make it, Junior and Kelly and Jenny and Ashley and I had a wonderful time.
It looked like a lot of fun. How did you pick your horse, though? You actually picked a horse that won one of the races, not the Kentucky Derby, the other one or something.
I always pick horses just based upon if I like their name. You know, Tasman won.
That's how a lot of people get elected to public office, is people like their name. They get selected that way.
I believe that. But, you know, the Oaks race, which is the big one of day 2, I picked Tasman because I like the Tasmanian Devil. I used to watch Bugs Bunny. And then when it came to the Derby, I picked Always Dreamin' because I'm looking at that going, well, you're always dreaming.
Oh, that's a
and I actually picked Irish War Pride, and they came in first and second.
Well, Chris, I appreciate you coming in today. You know, a lot of people just don't know this other side of you. They see, you know, the Facebook part, but you are such a gift to our community. We all appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Randy Ross. I do appreciate you as well, my friend.
And thank you for everything you did during the 2016 campaign and will continue to do. We have some exciting things that we've talked about that we're working on. So everybody, thanks for tuning in. This will be uploaded to a number of different pages as well as Facebook Live. We're continuing to work through our technology. I think it's looking great. Tommy and Bayshore Interactive, Bayshore Studios are doing a wonderful job, and we appreciate everything that they were doing. And Chris, once again, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.